On today's episode, I want to take a closer look at some recent updates impacting the AI space. I mean, we've heard so many rumors, in my opinion, in the last 72 hours about Nvidia. Things like Amazon delaying some of their data centers, some stuff dealing with the Chinese market, and a very, very popular podcast saying that Nvidia has roughly 47% of revenue coming from a certain segment. Well, let's take a closer look in today's episode. So let's get started.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so we can see Nvidia is down to $96.91 right now with a market cap of roughly $2.3 trillion. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is these rumors and kind of these analysts that keep coming out with things like this. Amazon has paused some data center lease commitments, Wells Fargo says. Wells Fargo wrote in a report on Monday that they've heard over the weekend about Amazon pausing lease conversations with co-location partners. Now, this is kind of the similar tone we've been hearing with Microsoft. Now, luckily, Amazon's Vice President of Global Data Centers, Kevin Miller, did respond a few hours ago. So there continues to be significant interest and speculations about data center expansion plans for AWS and other cloud providers. So I thought I'd share some of our thinking here. First and foremost, we continue to see strong demand for both generative AI and foundational workloads on AWS. We have almost 2 decades of experience delivering data center capacity to meet customers' demand, and when and where they need it. That experience has taught us to consider multiple solutions in parallel. Some options might end up costing too much, while others might not deliver when we need the capacity. Other times, we find that we need more capacity in one location and less in another. This is a routine capacity management, and there haven't been any recent fundamental changes in our expansion plans. So again, we keep hearing these negative news and negative sentiments from analysts about this pausing of data centers. And I think right now the data center market is just such a popular topic because of the AI revolution that everybody wants to find that aha moment or that I got you moment, the AI craze is over. Right now we can see from this vice president of global data centers at Amazon pretty much mentioned that is not happening. Right, that's not the case. They work with parallel solutions, and those solutions are just to help with the optionality if they don't need it in one place and they need to move it on to something else. Regardless, first and foremost, strong demand for both generative and foundational workloads at AWS. So they're literally telling us. I don't know how you can see or try to read between the lines or try to follow an analyst. The person that's dealing with this on the front end says that the AI market is still pretty strong with the amount of demand that they are seeing. I would guess if Microsoft's data center player or professional would post something, it would be very similar to this. So if one is fearful and saying, hey, look, this is game over for the AI market, we hear it from Microsoft, now we're hearing it from Amazon. I want to say those are the bearish theses that really don't have any true saying, in my opinion. Something I really wouldn't be too worried about. Now, there are some other reports. China's Huawei launches AI chip to fill Nvidia void. Huawei reportedly is planned to begin mass shipment next month of an alternative Nvidia now banned H20 processor, Reuters reported on Monday. They've already made some shipments of this new AI chip called the 910C. Now, the 910C achieves performance comparable to Nvidia's H100 chip. Remember, this is a chip that's about 3 years old almost now. So and we can see that there's no real competition for Nvidia anytime soon. Now, on the Chinese market, that's a whole different story though, right? Because there is kind of this ban now for Nvidia's H20 chip that even if you have a weaker down version and there is no other competitor in the space because Nvidia can't compete there, then your solution will be the preferred solution since it's like the only viable solution. Now, in the short term, obviously that wouldn't really have much impact on Nvidia, in my opinion, outside of that revenue hit. In the long term, though, this is where things start to get a little bit tricky. If you start pushing another competitor in the Chinese market to evolve at a rapid pace because there's so much demand for this market, the Chinese market is going to be feeding that company billions and billions of dollars throughout the years. What can they do with the research and development? What market can they expand outside of the Chinese space, right? It does create the optionality or the opportunity for a rival to be set up because of these regulations. And now, is that something that should be seen as a national security risk? And I think that's why I've talked about it in the past with these regulations. I think if you want to kind of starve technology, you just do it enough where you can at least still be a competitor in the product and split up kind of the funding between Nvidia and kind of a domestic play in that part of the region. But now by eliminating a competitor in that space, being Nvidia, you're gonna have all the money flowing into one direction and help kind of create a tailwind for that accelerator or for that company to benefit dramatically in the long term of things. So something to keep in mind of. I would hopefully want Nvidia, a weaker down version of their chips, to still make it available in China. Definitely not the best of the best due to some concerns, but regardless, I think a complete void is not the best thing for anyone's interest, in my opinion. Now, following here with the Chinese market, there are rumors that NVIDIA is to collaborate with DeepSeek to develop custom AI chip for China. I'm not sure how true this is, and this is rumors. The only thing I would say is for NVIDIA, one of the things that they have to do is, if they do have kind of a standard of what they can produce, I would say they should focus on making a chip lower than that standard to kind of have a buffer room. But the most important thing is to continue to push developers in that in that area, in that geographic, to focus on developing in NVIDIA ecosystem. Again, like I mentioned, not only right, are you pouring billions of dollars to go to the Huawei, for example, the competitor of NVIDIA, but the other thing that kind of disposing NVIDIA from the market, you're going to push the developers of part of that region to really focus on a Huawei software application. And again, can help fuel that. Now, in the future, right, you're going to have now not just a hardware competition, but also a developer and software competition to some extent. So nothing to my opinion to be worried about right now, but it's something that as a long-term investor which should keep a focus on. Now onto some bullish news. Elon Musk XAI reportedly looking to raise as much as $25 billion as it continues to work on the Colossal 2 supercomputer that's expected to house about 1 million NVIDIA GPUs at a cost of over $35 billion. So again, you are seeing that these big NVIDIA AI customers are still spending a lot of money. So you heard it from AWS that there's still strong demand for generative AI and for foundational model work. You're hearing here that Elon is planning to build a lot of data center for its overall AI company. So again, that theory or that thesis of AI being dead is, to me, I can't see it when I hear this from the people in the front line. Now, the other thing that I wanted to kind of take a closer look at is this podcast, so the All In podcast. And it's weird. I want to share my overall thoughts. And obviously, the people in these podcasts are way richer than me. They have way more wealth, so they're definitely smart at something. But I think one thing that might be smarter in is the semiconductor industry. And here, just from the first thing from Chamath, or however you pronounce the gentleman's name, says, I think we can all do the math. About 47% of all of NVIDIA's revenue goes to China and Chinese-related companies. And I think when you peel back this onion, what you will find is that a whole raft of companies that were stood up to buy these NVIDIA GPUs are to essentially act as a way station for China. So first that, I mean, to understand how... I thought this person was a businessman, but to understand that all these major cloud server providers have plenty of entities in places like Singapore where they want to ship those AI servers because they are focusing in other parts of the world, and kind of the building of these AI servers are a lot in Taiwan with Winstron, Foxconn, and the list goes on and on. Obviously, you are going to see a huge portion of the revenue going into that market. So I think Shamath, if I am correct, has kind of like a competition or owns a competitor or is invested in a competitor to Nvidia. So take what he says with a grain of salt. But kind of just saying that 47% of total revenue goes to China and Chinese related countries for that advancements there, in my opinion, is complete baloney, and there's no real data to back it. But there is plenty of data that shows that Winstron, Foxconn, and all these AI server makers are in Taiwan, are in Singapore, are in Google Cloud. All these companies that also design their AI servers are in these countries. So there is data to show that it is very possible for that revenue to be pretty high. Now, he kind of goes and says that, hey, look, every single time we have an advance in the United States in forms of AI innovation, how is it that Alibaba shows up with something incredible? DeepSeek shows up with something even better. Now, this is kind of putting like a conspiracy theory on. Nvidia sending all these AI chips to these countries, and that's the only way that these companies are developing these solutions. I would say again, if this was the case, I personally believe that we would have heard a lot of backlash from companies like OpenAI, especially Sam Altman, right? Sam Altman would say, hey, look, the reason DeepSeek is a thing is because NVIDIA and all these other players are sending massive GPUs or they have these massive AI infrastructures. The reason Alibaba is so far ahead, but no one, Google Cloud and all these big players, when they kind of talked about DeepSeek, it was out of respect. It was like, look, DeepSeek engineers actually did something pretty unique in the way of training solutions. They haven't done anything crazy in the forms of inference, but in the forms of training, it was something unique. So we can see that if, in my opinion, if some random person who's just trying to kind of be a bearish thesis to NVIDIA is showcasing that NVIDIA is maybe doing something illegal, I don't take that with too much truth. What I would rather look is, again, I haven't seen Elon Musk from XAI really complain. I haven't seen Sam Altman from OpenAI really complain. I haven't seen any AI companies, any other big players. Most of those big tech players, like I mentioned, have said that while the DeepSeek has created a revolutionary moment in training, there's still so much more to do here in the overall architecture of AI innovation, right? So I would say that I really wouldn't see that being the truth. I think maybe somehow the Chinese, because they are constrained in certain technology, you have to view at things in another point of view, right? Let's say if you only have certain tools to your disposal, now you're looking at this problem in a whole different set of eyes, opposed to maybe an American company who has a lot of ultimate capacity at their disposal. Now, right here, they also talk about how, to be honest, I think the real problem is that NVIDIA is not doing what's the best interest of the United States. I think that's completely false. Again, I believe NVIDIA is providing a lot of solutions to the American companies, right? Microsoft, all these big players are spending the money, and NVIDIA is willing to ship it to them, right? So again, I don't think there's any evil modes of against the U.S. interest. And late last year, he talks about how they introduced this thing called the H20 that was explicitly designed for China and to be compliant with U.S. rules at the time, which again gives these guys substantial performance. How is that a thing? I mean, the United States government created a form of benchmark. NVIDIA followed it to the T. How is that giving these guys a substantial performance if you're following it with a T? So again, just it seems like a lot of just envy, especially because you might own a company like Grok that isn't really doing much in the field out there, and that isn't really making the type of revenues that Nvidia is making, even though this is a market where even the biggest losers can win. But that's besides the point. And finally, this is the case where Nvidia has the plausible deniability. I sell something to a Singaporean registered company. Plausible deniability. I mean, anytime that anything has to deal with national security, you actually have to really find out where some of these products are going. So I think kind of doing plausible deniability is not going to be an easy thing for Nvidia. Again, I don't know. This guy, obviously, much more wealthier than me by loads. He is probably a great businessman, but I don't know in his overall thoughts here into the semiconductor industry. So I just want to share my overall thoughts and kind of maybe just make a counter argument here. Would love to maybe try to see the other end of this, but in most of these, I didn't really see any truth behind them. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. again, there is a lot of risk. I mean, I think there's a difference between risk to Nvidia, risk to the AI market, and kind of a lot of these bearish points. So obviously, things like with the tariffs right now could definitely provide a scenario where maybe data center spending slowed down. There can also be a scenario where AI innovation slows down, where you don't need to build that much data centers. I do see that there are variable bearish theses. Now, the bearish theses that are being kind of thrown out there right now are ones that I would love to argue against. So it's not like I'm a perma for Nvidia. I understand the risk, but the current ones that I look at are in my opinion, just a laughing matter. Now, obviously, overall macroeconomics shift and overall uncertainties in stocks have created a very scary time for the stock market. Still, a long-term investor. Luckily for me, I do have a very low cost basis, but I have no intentions of selling Nvidia anytime soon. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Let me know what you guys think. Take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.